an epitome of the virtues, in which a Christian soul, that desires to lead a perfect life and become a saint, should exercise itself. It would be useful to read this epitome every time you make your day's retreat, that you may see, in what virtues you are wanting. 1. To desire always to increase in love towards Jesus Christ. Holy desires are wings with which souls fly to God. Saint Aloysius Gonzaga made himself a saint in a short time, through the great desire he had of loving God, and as he knew, he should never be able to love him, as much as he was worthy of being loved, he consumed himself in ardent desires. On this account, Saint Mary Magdalene of Puzzy called Saint Aloysius, a martyr of love. 2. To meditate often on the Passion of Jesus Christ. Saint Bonaventure said that the wounds of Jesus Christ are wounds which pierce every heart, and inflame them with holy love. 3. Often during the day, to make acts of love towards Jesus Christ, beginning from the time you wake in the morning, and trying to make an act of love as you fall asleep. Acts of love, says Saint Teresa, are the fuel, with which the fire of divine love is kept burning in our hearts. 4. Always to ask Jesus Christ to give you his holy love. The grace of loving God, says Saint Francis of Sales, is the grace which contains, and brings along with it all the other graces. Because he who truly loves God, will endeavor to avoid anything that might be displeasing to him, and will study how to please him in all things. It is, therefore, necessary above all things, to ask of God the grace to love him. 5. To frequent Holy Communion. A soul can do nothing that is more pleasing to God, than to communicate, in the state of grace. The reason of this is, that love tends to perfect union with the object beloved, as then Jesus Christ loves a soul that is in grace, with an immense love, he ardently desires to unite himself to it. This is what Holy Communion does, and by it, Jesus Christ is wholly united to the soul. He that eats my flesh, dwells in me, and I in him. Consequently, the soul can perform no action that is dearer to Jesus Christ, than that of receiving him in the Holy Eucharist. For this reason, let spiritual souls endeavor to communicate many times in the week, and if possible every day, but always with the permission of their director. For communions and mortifications done out of a person's own head, lead to pride, rather than spirituality. For the rest, the penitent should earnestly ask his director, both for communions and mortifications, because directors are induced to grant them, more or less frequently, according to the greater or less desire, which they discover in their penitents. 6. To make, during the day, many spiritual communions, at least 3. 7. Often to visit the most holy sacrament of the altar, at least once or twice a day. And in the visit, after the acts of faith, of thanksgiving, of love, and of contrition, to ask fervently for perseverance and holy love. 8. When disturbances, losses, affronts, or other adverse things happen, to have recourse to the ever-blessed sacrament, at least in spirit, if you cannot go to the church. 9. Every morning on rising, to offer yourself to God to suffer in peace, and to accept from his hands all the crosses that will befall you on that day, embracing also in peace all contradictions. Thy will be done, is the word which was constantly in the mouths of the saints. Lord, may thy will always be done. 10. To be glad, and to rejoice, that God is infinitely happy and blessed. If we love God more than ourselves, as we are bound to love him, we ought to rejoice more at God's happiness, than at our own. 11. To desire heaven and death, that we may be delivered from the danger, in which we are, of losing God, and to go and love Jesus Christ, with all our strength and forever, without the fear of losing him again. 12. Often to speak with others of the love, which Jesus Christ has borne us, and of the love we owe to him. 13. To go to God without reserve, not denying him anything that we know to be pleasing to him, but rather choosing such things as are most agreeable to him. 14. To desire and endeavor to persuade all to love Jesus Christ. 15. Always to pray for the souls in purgatory, and for poor sinners. 16. To drive away from your heart all affections that have not God for their object. 17. Often to have recourse to the saints, and especially to the ever-blessed Mary, that they may obtain for you the love of God. 18. To honor Mary, in order to please God. 19. To do all your actions, with the sole end of pleasing Jesus Christ, saying at the commencement of each action, O Lord, let it be all for thee. 20. To offer yourself many times during the day, to God and to Jesus Christ, as willing to suffer any pain for his love, and say, My Jesus, I give myself all to thee, here I am, do with me what thou wilt. 21. To be resolved to die 1,000 times, rather than commit a deliberate sin, even though only a venial one. 22. To deny yourself even lawful satisfactions, doing so at least once or twice a day. 23. When we hear people talk of riches, honors, and amusements of the world, let us remember that all things have an end, and let us then say, My God, I wish only for thee, and nothing more. 24. To make 2 hours of mental prayer, or at least 1 hour during the day. 25. To make use of all those external mortifications that obedience permits, but to pay particular attention to interior mortification, such as abstaining from gratifying our curiosity, from answering when we are reproached, from saying witty things, and the like, and never to do anything for your own satisfaction. 26. Whatever devout exercise you may perform, to do it as if it were the last time you had to do it. To this end, in your meditation, you should often think of death, and when you go to bed, think that you will one day there expire. 27. Not to leave off your usual devotions, or any other good work, on account of any aridity or weariness that you may experience. He who begins to leave them off for a slight cause, is in danger of giving them up entirely. 28. Not to leave undone any good action, out of human respect. Not to complain in sickness of any want of attention, on the part of the doctors, servants, or assistants, and to try and conceal even our sufferings, as much as we can. To love solitude and silence, in order to be able to discourse only with God. And for this reason, we must shun the conversations of this world. 29. To drive away sadness, preserving our tranquility, and a cheerful countenance in all events, with a constant uniformity. One who wills what God wills, should never be afflicted. 30. To recommend yourself often to spiritual persons. 31. Always to have recourse immediately to Jesus and Mary, with great confidence, in your temptations, continuing to pronounce the holy names of Jesus and Mary, as long as the temptation lasts. 32. To have great confidence, first in the passion of Jesus Christ, and then in the intercession of Mary, and to ask God every day to give you this confidence. 33. After a fault, not to be disturbed, and never to despair, even though you should know yourself to be wanting in fidelity, and though you should fall again and again into the same fault, but to repent immediately, and to renew your promise of amendment, with confidence in God. 34. To render good to anyone who does you evil, or at least to pray to the Lord for him. 35. To answer with meekness, when anyone says, or does anything to injure you, and so you will gain him over to you. Moreover, when you feel yourself annoyed, it is well to be silent until you are composed, otherwise you will commit many faults without perceiving it. 36. When you have to correct anyone, you should choose a time when neither you, nor the person who is to be corrected, are excited, otherwise, the correction will prove more hurtful than useful. 37. To speak well of all, and to excuse the intention, when you cannot justify the action. 38. To help your neighbor as much as you can, especially one who has been opposed to you. 39. Not to say or do anything that may be displeasing to anyone, except it were necessary to please God rather than men. 40. And if sometimes you are wanting in charity towards anyone, ask his pardon, or at least, speak kindly to him. 41. To speak always with meekness, and in a low voice. 42. To offer to God the contempt you meet with, and not to complain afterwards to others of it. 43. To observe carefully the rules given you by your confessor. 44. To consider and honor in your superiors, as the persons of Jesus Christ himself. 45. To love the most humble employments. 46. To choose the poorest things for yourself. 47. To obey without replying, and without showing repugnance, and, on the other hand, not to ask anything, for your own satisfaction. 48. Not to speak of yourself, whether it be good or evil. Sometimes to speak in disparagement of ourselves fosters pride. 49. To humble yourself even towards your inferiors. 50. Not to excuse yourself, when you are reproved or calumniated, unless it be absolutely necessary for the common good, or to avoid giving scandal to others. 51. To visit and assist the sick, as much as possible, and especially the most abandoned. 52. Often to say to yourself, if I wish to become a saint, I must suffer. If I wish to please God, I must do His will, and not my own. 53. Always to renew your resolution of becoming a saint, and not to lose courage in whatever state of tepidity you may find yourself. 54. To renew each day the resolution that you have taken of advancing in perfection. 55. Let religious endeavor every day to renew the vows of their profession. The doctors of the Church say that a person who renews his vows of religion gains a plenary indulgence, as he does the first time that he makes them. 56. The exercise which is most essential to be practiced by a soul that desires to please God is to conform itself in all things to the divine will, and to embrace with peace all things that are contrary to the senses, in pains, sicknesses, affronts, contradictions, loss of property, the death of relatives, or of other persons who are dear to us, and to receive them each day when we awake, as coming from God. Tribulations are those blessed treasuries, in which the saints find such stores of merits. We cannot give greater glory to God than by conforming ourselves in all things to His holy will. This is the continual practice of devout souls, and it is the end to be attained by mental prayer. Saint Teresa says that all that a person who gives himself up to prayer ought to seek is conformity to the divine will. And let him be sure that in this consists the highest perfection. This, then, must be our only intention in all our actions, in our meditations, and in our prayers. We must always pray, O Lord, teach me to do Thy will. Tell me, Lord, what Thou dost desire of me, and I will do it all. Thy will be done. Such is the prayer continually on the lips of the saints. And this is all that God requires of us: my son, give me thy heart. But perfection consists in conforming ourselves to the will of God, in those things which are disagreeable to us. The Venerable Father Avila says, "It is of more use to say once, 'Blessed be God,' in any contradiction, than to thank Him 6,000 times, when we are pleased." We must also be conformed to those crosses, which come to us by means of others, as in calumniations, deceptions, and contempt, because it all comes from God. Not that the Lord then wills the fault of the person who offends us, but He does will that we should be humble and mortified. Good things and evil are from God. We call tribulations, evils and misfortunes, and we make them so, by suffering them with impatience. But if we receive them with resignation, they would become graces and jewels, to enrich our crown in heaven. In a word, he who is always united with the will of God becomes a saint, and enjoys even here on earth, a perpetual peace. Whatever shall befall the just man, it shall not make him sad. 57. To recommend ourselves to the prayers of devout people. But still more to recommend ourselves to the saints in heaven, and especially to the ever-blessed Mary, setting great value on devotion towards this Divine Mother, and not omitting any opportunity of inducing others to practice it. Those who have a great confidence in the patronage of Mary, ought to be very grateful to God for it is a great pledge of their salvation, and those who have it not, ought to pray that He would grant it to them. Thank you for watching. God love you.